The splatter movie, a subgenre of the horror genre, is known for its extreme portrayal of graphic violence, dismemberment, body mutilation, gore, and bloodshed. While the genre is constantly rediscovering itself through its history, cinematic storytelling, and complex themes, a handful of the best films are worth looking at. Today, we delve into and explore the 12 best splatter movies throughout the history of cinema and the splatter genre. We'll look at the narrative, characters, and emotions. These movies, with their horror and madness, explore the dark and wild side of the human psyche and condition. We hope you'll be excited for this splatter ride. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead, 1992. The film begins in 1957 in a place called Skull Island. A New Zealand zoo official, Stuart, smuggles a Sumatran rat monkey from a warrior native tribe for an exhibition in the Wellington Zoo in Newtown, New Zealand. The rat monkey is a hybrid creature, and the legend goes that it has resulted from the rape of tree monkeys in Skull Island by plague-infected rats. Fun fact, the Sumatran rat monkey legend goes back to Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. While Doyle called it again the giant rat of Sumatra in one of his stories, many people have changed it in the future for their own stories, including this film. While the zoo official, Stuart, successfully snatches the rat monkey from the native, the rat monkey bites him back. Seeing this, the crew of Stuart dismembers and kills the official. The film then cuts to the town of Wellington. We follow a family that resides in a Victorian mansion, which includes Lionel and his mother Vera. It's revealed that Lionel's father drowned while attempting to save him at a beach when he was a child. Lionel is haunted by this incident all these years into adulthood. The film also introduces another character, a neighborhood shopkeeper's daughter, Paquita, who believes Lionel is her destined companion. Soon they fall in love and meet and date in many places, including Wellington Zoo. Meanwhile, Lionel's mother Vera is unhappy with this relationship. She follows them to the zoo. In the zoo, while trying to peep on Lionel and Paquita, she gets bitten by the rat monkey, and in turn, she kills the rat monkey instantly right there. Following this, in a few days, Vera feels more vulnerable, and her skin starts to peel off, including her ear falling off. Puzzled by all of this, Lionel seeks help from Paquita and from a nurse. Eventually, Vera dies, but gets reanimated as a deadly zombie, killing off the nurse, who also returns as a zombie. Still perplexed and shocked, Lionel locks both of them in the basement of his mansion while not letting Paquita know about anything. After all this, Paquita's grandmother gives Lionel a pendant for luck, to save Lionel and Paquita from torment. Meanwhile, Lionel arranges a funeral for his mother, which also goes haywire as she keeps on attacking Lionel and other people until and unless Lionel injects tranquilizers. Following the funeral in the night, Vera bursts out of her grave and attacks some local goons and the priest. Lionel now locks everyone in the basement and gives tranquilizers to keep them calm. The film becomes more absurd as the zombie priest and the zombie nurse copulate and have a zombie baby. Horrified, Lionel breaks up with Paquita to save her from this chaos. Amidst all this, Lionel's uncle Les arrives with an evil intention to take Vera's mansion. Les successfully blackmails Lionel into giving him the inheritance, and he sets up a housewarming party. Boom! Now the absolute madness, horror, and splatter begins. Every zombie bursts up from the basement into the upper house in the mansion, killing the party guests. There's total bloodshed, body parts, gore, and madness. Everyone is running around. From the zombie kid to the other zombies, everyone is attacking, eating, beheading, and killing. Meanwhile, Paquita tries to reconcile with Lionel. At the film's end, Vera, who has now become the ultimate giant and fat monstrous creature, kills Les and tries to find Lionel and Paquita to kill them. Lionel and Paquita run to the rooftop, where Lionel confronts Vera for killing her husband and his father and continuously lying to him throughout these years. He tells her that he's no longer afraid of her. Vera becomes more enraged and swallows Lionel while trying to attack Paquita. At that dramatic moment, Lionel bursts out of his mother's body with a pendant and kills off Vera while saving Paquita. Lionel and Paquita kiss each other and leave the place, while in the background the mansion burns. Brain Dead, also popularly known as Dead Alive in North America, is directed by Peter Jackson. Yeah, you heard that right. The director of the famous and celebrated Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogy. This comedy zombie splatter film pushes the portrayal of gore and violence to an extreme level while retaining the slapstick physical comedy. The Evil Dead, 1981. The Evil Dead is about a group of friends who go for a vacation in the midst of a cabin in the woods. Soon, it turns out to be madness and a nightmare in the woods, turning their lives upside down. The film begins with 5 Michigan State University students driving a car into the woods for their vacation. There are Ash and his girlfriend Linda, Ash's sister Cheryl, and the other 2 are Scotty and his girlfriend Shelley. From the beginning, Sam Raimi's camera not only follows this group of friends, but also an unrecognized other point of view, which makes the viewer alert and anxious about about the coming horror. It's Cheryl, with whom all kinds of otherworldly experiences start to happen, but she ignores them. Shortly afterward, in the night, the group discovers a book, the Naturum Demonto, the Book of the Undead. Strange and unnatural things start to happen. Cheryl decides to go out of the cabin to see what's happening, and she gets trapped, attacked and raped by demonically possessed trees. Seeing this, her brother Ash agrees to drop her off at a nearby town to let her sleep in the night, but they find that the nearby bridge that connects the cabin and the world is broken, and they have to return. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, when things start to feel normal, a sudden horror erupts. Cheryl finally turns into a deadite and begins to levitate while asking why they woke her up and threatening to kill everyone. Following this, Shelly also becomes a deadite and starts attacking Ash and Scotty. Scotty has no choice but to dismember his girlfriend Shelly. Perplexed and shocked by this, Scotty searches for another route to town while Ash stays in the cabin. Ash discovers that Linda has also become possessed. Meanwhile, Scotty gets attacked by the possessed tree, but he manages to get back to the cabin and die while alerting Ash about the trees. What follows is a deadly fight between Linda and Ash, in which Ash somehow manages to decapitate Linda. In the film's last moments, when Cheryl and Scotty attack Ash, Ash finds out that if the Book of the Undead is burned, he can be saved, and the possessed deadites would die. In the end, when the book is burned, Cheryl and Scotty's bodies start to decompose, and the fire unleashes extreme gore, bloodshed, and graphic violence. In the end, when dawn sets in, Ash leaves the cabin, and the unseen evil in the form of an unrecognized camera POV comes back behind him through the forest and cabin. He turns and screams in terror. However, when Raimi started to make this movie, he faced many difficulties and challenges, yet he was finally able to make one of cinema history's classic horror and splatter movies. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. Finally, we have a film by the great horror filmmaker George A. Romero on this list. Romero's previous ghoul and undead horror films, we have to keep in mind here that the term zombie was not in use. It was Romero who made it famous by using it in other interviews. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, was a popular hit and one of the first kind for horror cinema fans worldwide. In this film, he's back with a full-fledged zombie horror narrative, exploring different layers of human experience and emotions. When a zombie outbreak occurs, leading to the breaking of social order and mass hysteria, a group of people try to survive in a shopping mall. It sounds simple, but the film is full of madness and horror. It's a full-fledged splatter movie. The film begins in a fictional TV studio in Philadelphia, where the effect of the chaos of the undead zombie outbreak is seen. We follow two characters, traffic reporter Stephen Andrews and his pregnant girlfriend, Francine Fran Parker, who try to escape with the TV station's own helicopter. Meanwhile, the film introduces the other two important characters in the story, SWAT Philadelphia police officer Roger DeMarco and Peter Washington. After a raid and attack on the local black and Latino immigrants who are ignoring the martial law order of delivering their dead to the National Guard, both of them join Stephen is Roger's friend, in their escape. First, they decide to fly to the Canadian wilderness, but stop in a shopping mall, as the place would have plenty of food and other consumable things. They fully cover the mall according to their convenience, and try to enjoy an entire hedonistic life. Still, the reckless Roger gets bitten by a zombie and eventually shows signs of infection. Peter kills him off before he reanimates as the undead. The film cuts to several months later. There's no broadcast, nothing is coming from the outside world, showing a sign of the total collapse of the social and human order. Eventually, a nomadic biker gang discovers their presence and tries to intrude and break into the mall. It creates chaos as hundreds of undead zombies attack, and Stephen and Peter have to battle. A violent clash occurs, leading to Stephen getting bitten by the zombies. After the reanimation, Stephen leads the gang of zombies to Fran and Peter. Peter cannot help but kill Stephen while Fran escapes to the roof. Peter decides to give up, but at the last moment, he flies with Fran. Uncertain about the future, they fly away in the helicopter. The film traverses through some great moments of terror and ends up being a classic splatter film. The Thing, 1982. It's a story about a group of American researchers in an Antarctica research station where they find a parasitic extraterrestrial life form that takes the form of any organism they attack. They can imitate and assimilate the same form. After it invades the researchers' base and attacks them, panic and paranoia start to build around them, and they try to find a way to save themselves. The scenes are full of gory imagery, pushing the splatter genre's limits. The creepy soundtrack and the terrifying twists in the narrative create a perfect film to watch. The Thing, directed by John Carpenter, is a cult classic that terrifies viewers with its paranoia plot, hysterical characters, and bloodshed situations. Critics have maintained that it is a striking comment on the nature of the scientific research industry, authority, and establishment. They've also pointed out its pessimism and nihilism compared to other Hollywood movies of that time, which worked in similar genres. The Fly, 1986. The Fly is a story about a scientist descending into madness. A scientist and inventor, Seth Brundle, invented a set of telepods that can allow teleportation. Seth meets a journalist, Veronica Quaife, in the Science Meet program. Seth shows her the magic of telepods so that they can document the story of this great invention that can change the future of human lives. Meanwhile, they also fall in love and have sex. Following this, Seth reprograms the telepods to deal with living flesh, not just objects. After a crisis in their relationship due to a misunderstanding by Seth, he tries the transportation in the telepods himself, and he successfully emerges into the receiving pod. But unseen to him, a fly also slips into the pod. After some time, Seth realizes something is wrong with his body, and it turns out the telepod computer has merged two life forms, the human and the fly, at the molecular genetic level. As Seth becomes a hybrid creature, Veronica discovers that she's pregnant and is terrified about when the child is conceived. Veronica is afraid that the child will be a mutant, so she considers abortion. Meanwhile, Seth creates a plan to abduct Veronica so that they can form one entity, Seth himself and Veronica with her unborn child. In the end, Veronica's boss, Stathis, fights with Seth and saves Veronica. Veronica finishes off her love, the hybrid creature Seth Brundle. The Fly, directed by the body horror genre specialist David Cronenberg, is a mind-blowing exploration of the human psyche and violence. Its portrayal of violent and horror imagery stands the test of time.
Get it!
Day of the Dead, 1985. The next film on the list is again by George A. Romero. We now have the next movie in his Night of the Living Dead series, Day of the Dead, which was made in 1985. It takes place in the aftermath of the Dawn of the Dead events. When the zombie apocalypse has taken over the entire world, the social and human order has collapsed, and few people have been surviving in the underground. Some of these are soldiers and scientists living underground in a missile bunker in Florida. We follow the characters Dr. Sarah Bowman and her lover, Soldier Private Miguel Salazar, and with them radio operator Bill McDermott and helicopter pilot John. Another main character is Dr. Logan, or as the soldiers call him by his nickname, Frankenstein, who's trying to figure out how to cure the zombie plague that has taken over the world. What follows is a story of madness and the disorder and breakdown of human communication and society. Dr. Logan believes in training and domesticating the undead zombies, while Dr. Sarah prefers to create a cure for the virus. Meanwhile, Soldier Captain Rhodes orders Dr. Logan to solve the case as soon as possible, otherwise he'll kill and abandon the compound, letting all the undead take over the underground basement. In the meantime, Dr. Logan successfully creates a docile zombie, Bub, who's slowly getting domesticated. But the story is not so simple. There are more secrets, madness, and lies included in the actions of Dr. Logan, who's secretly experimenting on the dead remains of the soldiers. Soon, Captain Rhodes discovers it and kills him. After this, Bub, who has developed human emotions, avenges the death of Dr. Logan, as he thinks Logan was his instructor. Captain Rhodes gets killed by Bub, while suicidal Miguel dies at the hands of zombies. A deadly, bloody fight takes place in the film's final moments. But finally, Sarah, John, and Bill manage to fly off in a helicopter to a nearby tropical island. The film traverses through some great moments of horror and ends up being a classic splatter film.
Get ready.
Hellbound, Hellraiser II. Hellraiser II begins with a prologue, in which we see the transformation of a British military officer in 1920s India into Pinhead when he discovers the mysterious puzzle box, the Lamentation configuration. The film then returns to the aftermath of the first film in the series, Hellraiser. After her father Larry was killed by her uncle Frank Cotton, Kirsty Cotton was admitted into a psychiatric hospital. This film introduces a character, Dr. Channard, who desires the mysterious and otherworldly puzzle of the Lament configuration. Dr. Channard tries to find a way to get into the box and solve it with Tiffany's help, who's excellent at solving puzzles. Meanwhile, with the help of Channard, Julia comes back into the film. She's Kirsty's stepmother who was killed in the previous film, and controls Channard. Perplexed by all this, Kirsty takes matters into her own hands and enters the labyrinth-like world of the Lament configuration, where Cenobites and Pinhead reside. Inside the world of Hell, they discover the powerful godlike entity Leviathan, who's responsible for Julia's actions, and forces Channard to become a Cenobite. Eventually, Kirsty and Tiffany meet to escape, but Pinhead and his Cenobites encounter them. Kirsty manages to invoke the human side of Pinhead and fellow Cenobites, but Channard, now all the more powerful, kills Pinhead and the fellow Cenobites. In the final confrontation, Kirsty and Tiffany somehow flee and successfully solve the puzzle while killing Channard. Finally, the door to hell is closed. A spine-chilling horror imagination. This film on the list is a splatter flick that everyone should watch. Terrifier II. Terrifier II, directed and written by Damien Leone, is a supernatural splatter film. It's a sequel to the 2016 film Terrifier, which Damien directed himself. One of the major characters in the film, Art the Clown, returns in Terrifier II. The film begins with the resurrection of Art by an unknown entity after the Miles County massacre, and he finds another mysterious entity in a similar clown dress, Little Pale Girl. Meanwhile, a year later, before Halloween, we're introduced to a family, Sienna Shaw, her brother Jonathan, and her mother Barbara. Sienna and Jonathan prepare for their Halloween party. While Sienna thinks of wearing a dress given by her late father, Jonathan believes in going as Art the Clown. On the same night, Sienna, in her dream, sees Art. Following that, her chosen dress for the Halloween party gets burned, but a sword that her father has given her remains intact. On the day of Halloween, Art attacks their mother, Barbara, and also decapitates Jonathan. After this, Art and the little girl deceive Sienna into going into an abandoned carnival. There, Art kills Sienna's boyfriend, and eventually, after a bloody fight, kills Sienna with her father's sword. Art starts to eat Jonathan's body. In the meantime, Sienna gets resurrected by her father's sword and decapitates Art. Planet Terror, 2007. Planet Terror is our next movie on the list. It's a zombie horror splatter film that pushes the boundaries of storytelling and the splatter genre. Made by the famous Robert Rodriguez, this film was part of a double feature named Grindhouse, which included another movie, Death Proof, by the master Quentin Tarantino. This film is a story of survival in the face of biochemical outbreak in the American state of Texas. In rural Texas, when a biochemical outbreak occurs affecting the population to become deformed zombies, few of the survivors battle with these zombie-like creatures and try to survive. Go-Go dancer Cherry and her boyfriend El Rey try to run to the Mexican border with Dakota and her estranged son Tony, but they face difficulty from the military and soldiers of the demented Lieutenant Muldoon. After many blood-intensive fights, El Rey saves Cheryl but gets himself wounded. In the epilogue, we see Cheryl starting a new society in this apocalyptic world and giving birth to El Rey's daughter, a glimpse of hope at the end of the film. Reanimator, 1958. It's a story about Herbert West, who invents a reagent that reanimates dead bodies. The film begins with Herbert West trying his reagent on his dead professor. He successfully reanimates the professor, albeit with many side effects. West then goes to America to continue the study. After coming to New England to continue his medical studies on the subject, West tries the reagent on a cat to prove to his friend Dan. Perplexed and impressed, Dan tries to convince the dean, Dr. Halsey, about the phenomenon, but the dean thinks they've gone mad. Meanwhile, Megan, Dr. Halsey's daughter and Dan's girlfriend, is horrified by all this. Shortly after, West and Dan try the reagent on some dead bodies in the morgue, and it goes wrong. The dead become undead, taking on the forms of zombies, and kill Dr. Halsey, who was there accidentally. Shocked by the whole situation, West applies the reagent to Dr. Halsey and takes the help of researcher and brain surgeon Dr. Hill. It turns out Dr. Hill has other intentions as he tries to steal the credit for the invention from West and goes on to abuse Megan. In the final moments, West and Megan succumb to the lethal Dr. Hill, while Dan saves West notes, ideas, and work. Ultimately, out of love and despair, Dan injects a dose into Megan. Megan seemingly revives from death, and a scream can be heard. Reanimator is adapted from the classic story Herbert West, Reanimator, by the master of the horror genre, H.P. Lovecraft. The film, directed by Stuart Gordon, has become a classic and has a successful franchise. NECromantic, 1987. Next on our list is a German classic horror splatter film. NECromantic is the Western German horror splatter film directed by Jörg Buttgereit. It literally translates into necro plus romance, or necrophilia, the sexual attraction towards corpses. Now a cult classic, it was once a subject of censorship for its genre-defying taboo and transgressive themes, extreme graphic violence, reckless imagery, and storytelling. The film is about a working-class, young and troubled character, Robert Schmadtke, who works for a company that specializes in cleaning public spaces after an accident or similar events. We find out that Robert and his wife Betty have all kinds of necrophiliac fetishes, and Robert's work helps fulfill those fetishes and indulgences. Their apartment is full of dead human parts, centerfolds featuring models, and even portraits of famed killers. This film very cleverly juxtaposes this apartment's outside street view with the inside. One day after Robert's company has to deal with a dead body in the lake, Robert becomes captivated by the dead body and takes it home secretly. Robert and Betty engage in all kinds of fetishism, including sex. The next day, Robert is fired by his company because of allegations of tardiness and odor, which comes from his locker. After this event, Betty leaves him, and he suffers an emotional breakdown. Shortly after, Robert tries to engage in sex with a prostitute in a graveyard, but he's unable to perform sexually. The prostitute laughs at him. In turn, Robert kills her in rage and has sex with her corpse. The next day, Robert kills himself while ejaculating. The Hills Have Eyes, 2006. Between 1945 and 1962, the United States conducted 331 atmospheric nuclear tests. Today, the government still denies the genetic effects caused by the radioactive fallout, says the title card of the film. It's a direct reminder of the film's political undertone and the coming bloodshed in the movie. The film is directed by the French filmmaker Alexandre Aja. It's a remake of the 1977 classic of the same name, The Hills Have Eyes, directed by Wes Craven. Wes Craven is an executive producer in this remake. The film's story is about a group of cannibalistic mutants who trap a family on vacation after their car breaks down in the desert. The film begins with a family traveling through the New Mexico desert. The family consists of retired detective Bob Carter, his wife Ethel, and his 3 children, Lynn, Bobby, and Brenda. Lynn's husband Doug, their daughter Catherine, and their 2 German shepherds are also traveling with them. When the family stops at a gas station, an elderly attendant suggests a different route. Soon after taking the road, they're trapped. First, their tires are punctured, and their car crashes with a trailer. What follows is a lethal series of events lying underneath many untold lies. After being trapped in the desert, Bob again comes back for help in the gas station, where he finds out about various disappearances that happened after the US government's nuclear tests in a nearby mining town. It has led to casualties, including mutants' deformities. At that moment, Bob is confronted by the mutant leader, Papa Jupiter, and Jupiter burns Bob alive. Meanwhile, around the trailer, one of the dogs, Beauty, is killed. After a series of events, Lynn and Ethel are killed by 2 mutants, Lizard and Pluto, and they escape with the baby daughter Catherine. The next morning, heartbroken, Doug and Bobby set out to find Catherine. They find a nearby village where the nuclear tests were done, and they find the dismembered remains of the previous victims. Meanwhile, Pluto and Lizard attack Doug and Bobby again, but this time Doug kills Pluto. After this, Big Brain orders to kill the baby daughter Catherine, but one of the German shepherds kills the Big Brain, while Ruby, a kind-hearted mutant, saves Catherine and hands her over to Doug. In the meantime, Brenda and Bobby create a trap for Jupiter. Jupiter falls into the trap, and they kill him with a pickaxe. Doug and Catherine and the dog Beast reunite with Brenda and Bobby in the end. The film ends with an unknown mutant watching them with binoculars from afar. Marvelous verdict. As we've explored the 12 best splatter movies, we came across a range of imagery, themes, and ideas that these movies deal with. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of the graphic violence, gore, and crazy horror themes. Don't forget to comment on your favorite ones. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.